Today I answer questions about my adjusted, tilted and lowered screen. Alright, so today's video is in response to the questions that I've received about the screen mount for the car. And a number of the questions were repeated, and so I figured I would just do a video and answer as many of them as I can. So the first most common question is, can I make some kind of a covering for the mechanical apparatus at the back? And the answer is yes. I considered a 3D printed plastic shroud. I considered just a couple of either metal or even carbon fiber panels to screw, one on the top, one on each side to kind of hide it. Each of those would take a lot of time, but what seems to be the easiest solution would be a sock to go around it. And most people suggested leather, which I think would be very nice. That should be really not difficult at all to make. So today I'm going to the upholstery shop to have my modified steering wheel quoted on upholstery, and while I'm there I will point out to them specifically what I'm looking for, and I'm sure it wouldn't be a big deal to have done. So that would be a leather, again, sort of a sock, kind of similar to what's around a gear shift lever, or like on the if you look at the Model 3 steering wheel, many cars have this, the column where it moves up and down, there's a fabric or leather, or in this case with the Model 3, a vegan leather sock. So using socks like that in cars is very common, and I do think it's a reasonable thing to want that covered, so I'm going to look at that. Second most common question is, what about glare? Well, there's a couple things to consider with that. First, I only changed the angle 10 degrees, and as I mentioned in the video, I think I'm going to settle on an 8-degree tilt, because where the screen was at originally, you look directly at it. Your line of sight is perpendicular to the screen, so you're looking straight at it. In this instance, the 10 degrees, it's just the tiniest bit leaning forward more than, I'm not looking straight at it. Perpendicular would be like about here is my line of sight. So tipping it back about 2 degrees I think would be perfect. I do like the aggressive look of it leaned forward, but I'll drive it for a couple days and see what my thoughts are on that. I can also offer some adjustment shims to shim it a degree or two one way or another if you prefer. But so that the glare, it's not tipped back far enough for glare. In fact, I had it tipped at 20 degrees and drove it around on a sunny day, and there was zero glare, which seemed odd to me. What was annoying though is it was at such an angle that I could see there was a reflection in the screen of the rear view mirror and the top edge of the windshield. So I'm assuming glare could hit it, but I never had that. But I could see the rear view mirror in the top edge of the screen as a reflection, and that was weird. Tipping it back, I don't see any reflections whatsoever, and no glare. But again, it would be tipped at probably a tiny bit less angle than this for a production version. Now, let's see here. Oh, also, since it's lowered, even though it's angled back just a touch, it's lower, which gets it out of the direct line of sight, or out of the direct line of sun coming down on it. So no, I have yet to encounter any glare whatsoever. And so that's that. Another question was, what about making a screen mount that angles the screen toward you? And I had already thought about this, and I even, when I was making this mount, I kind of messed around with that a little bit, experimented with it. And is it doable? Well, sure. Anything's possible. Now, there's a couple things on that. First, the reason I didn't do it that way in my car, and I could potentially produce a mount like that for you guys, I have no problem doing it. There's a reason I didn't do it in my car. Well, a couple of reasons. One, it would break up the symmetrical look of the interior. Now, I know having a single steering wheel on the left side breaks up the symmetry, but when you angle the screen, you've got the center console is symmetrical. So you angle the screen, and suddenly the center console doesn't match the screen, and typically when you see a car with the screen tipped toward you, and I know the Model S has it slightly tipped toward the driver, but with most cars, when it's tipped toward the driver, you can look at Corvettes and a lot of cars that it's extreme where everything is angled. It's the whole center console flows in that way, and it becomes a very driver-centric layout. And so when you tip the screen, again, it's only the screen that's tipped, and it looks a little strange, at least to my eye. But I also know that this type of thing is very subjective. Also, I wanted my passengers to be able to mess with the screen more easily. So that's why I personally didn't do it. Do I have a problem making a mount for you guys that tips the screen over? I don't have a problem doing that at all. I'd be more than happy to do it. So what I want to do first is focus on this mount. Today I'm going to be talking to an upholsterer about the sock at the rear, or the boot, if you want to call it that, at the rear, and as well as my steering wheel, but I'll talk to them about that boot. And I've got two machinists that have done production for me for, I used to design and manufacture high-end upgrades for radio-controlled helicopters, CNC machined aluminum, titanium, carbon fiber. Used to take carbon fiber flat plates and CNC machine profiles out for frames for RC helicopters and that. And I've produced hundreds of electric drive systems for bicycles, CNC machined out of 6061 aluminum. So I've got several machine shops around the world, but there's two primarily that I've worked with in the past, thousands of parts made by them. So I'm going to talk to them and see what their production schedule looks like. And but it's I have no problem producing this. So, you know, I just need to know that there's enough of a market in it. I'd say I'd need to be able to sell a minimum of probably 20 of them up front to make it worthwhile, because even though there would be profit in it for me, I would have to pay for CAD work. I don't do any CAD myself, so I'd need to have the part drawn in CAD and then prototyped and fixtures made to machine each part, and then have the parts produced. Then I'd have to produce them in quantity. Now, whatever, maybe it's just a couple dozen, but I have to front that. So I'm going to be out, I don't know, a couple $1,000s out of pocket in getting this going. So I'd need to know there's enough market in it, but I have no problem doing it. My entire life, basically, I've always had little side businesses going. So I don't mind producing it at all. I did this just for me, but I really don't mind producing it for other people. So that brings me to the next question, and that is, before I get to cost, I was asked if the phone it would be visible in the dock. I have my tablet mounted here right now. You can see there's the screen. My line of sight is right there, so that's where I see the top edge of the tablet, which is about an inch down, but there's a border and whatever. I can see it just fine. It's not like I can look at it while I'm driving, but I can see it just fine. And that line of sight where I have is about a ½ inch down from the top of the phone dock, like right at the door, the lid hinges. So yeah, I could see an entire cell phone in there without a problem. So now cost. That's a tough one, because I need to have the parts quoted, and I need to be able to amortize my upfront costs for fixturing and CAD work and all that in. I also have to work on instructions, whether that be just a YouTube video that is unlisted that I could then send a link to everyone who purchases the mount kit, or whether it be printed or whatever, or sent out on a DVD, whatever you guys would want. Most likely it would just be a YouTube video that, let me get past these people. Most likely it would just be a YouTube video that you guys could click on to watch, but I have to set up instructions. I have to make sure that in the instructions I cover eventualities, like, be aware of this, or be careful of that. So maybe in the $250 to $280 range for the mount kit. With all hardware, there would be bolts, shims, washers, bore reducing spacers, 3 separate CNC machined aluminum parts that would all be anodized. There would be the leather boot to go around it, basic packaging. So again, in the mid to high 200s, probably 275-ish, maybe down as low as 225. But I've just learned to always overquote things a bit, because invariably there's going to be something that's going to come up that is going to affect the price negatively. So I don't know. I would say personally, just in my experience manufacturing things and what I need to make in order to make the packaging and run into the shipping outlet and customer service and all that worthwhile, probably about 275 would be my guess for the kit. So that's just a rough guess shooting from the hip. It's not going to be like $500. I had one person ask about that. Would not be that high, but it's not going to be a $100 item either, because it's probably going to cost me more than that to have everything, just the raw basic. Well, it's a lot more than that. It's probably going to be more like $150 just in basic material and labor and anodizing and stitching for the boot and all of that. Plus my time. There's going to be a little bit of it that I'm going to have to do. Some of the work will have to be done by myself, plus the packaging and shipping, and again covering all the setup time and all that initially to get the first run done. So I'm betting about 275-ish, 250 maybe at the lower end. So that's that. I was asked about the door. The door opens and closes just fine. Again, my tablet's blocking the door, but the cell phone door opens and closes just fine. Now, a turning mount, one that tips it to the side, would cost more because there would be more parts involved in that. And the reason for that is to angle the screen to the side. The screen mounts are tipped on an angle, going down toward the nose of the car, and so I can't just make a direct pivot, because if you pivot the screen, it on that plane, the pivot point would need to be vertical from level, because if I pivot it on the flat plate that inserts into the dash, it would not only rotate it toward you, but it would tip it on an angle. So you would end up with the screen leaned toward you and leaned left as well, because you end up with a compound angle. So first, what I would need to do is have a mount. The mount would need to do multiple things. Right now, all the mount really does is drop and lean the screen back, but it's on one plane. I'm not working with multiple planes. It's not a compound angle, it's a single angle. In order to rotate the screen to the side, first I have to translate that downward angle to a level plane so that the screen could be moved. Then change that flat plane back to an angle where the screen would be setting at. Also, I have a feeling that this side of the screen would also, being that it's such a wide screen, to pivot it would pull this side of the screen out pretty far. So I'm thinking a very modest angle change. Like, I wouldn't want it angled to directly face you, because it would be, the edge of the screen would be about here. And that would be, the passenger would be hitting their forearm on it. But potentially a modest angle change to bring this out maybe 1.5 inches would bring the other side in probably 3/4 of an inch or so, and that might be doable. And then it gets a little complicated, because in order to change the angle, I have to drop the screen, because I have to get the screen mount posts out of their cradle in the dash so that they can move. So the screen would be dropped probably to about this height and then rotated. And so that it would be dropped and then rotated as well, which is probably best. But again, I would say that would be at least double, probably more like triple the complexity. Not necessarily double or triple the cost, but double or triple the complexity. My guess is, between development time to do that, to work out all the bugs, to do all this drawing, to all the fixturing and everything, that part would probably be more like $350 to angle the screen to the side. Again, just because it is, you're dealing with a compound angle at that point. So totally open to doing it. I have no problem doing that for you guys. But this is a lot easier to deal with, and I think there's more. I can rush this to market. I can get this to market a lot quicker, and all the people I've asked about it, keeping symmetry inside this very symmetrical interior. About 2 out of 3 people preferred this. 1 out of 3 people wanted it pivoted toward you. So I'm going to work with this mount first. Another question was asked about that it makes your knee closer to the screen. Maybe a little, but I'm 5'10", and you can see my knee is 3 inches away from the corner of the screen, and it's always been somewhat near the screen. But also, when you angle the screen back, this part of the screen, the center of the screen is the same distance away from the dash as original. But when you angle it back, this part of the screen tips toward you. And so, like, for instance, in an accident, you're going to move forward. And I don't see an issue with my knee, but it was asked. I mean, you can see if I move my leg up and down, it clears it. But the question was asked, and so I wanted to address it. Let's see here. I think that's all. I'm trying to think here. If I come up with anything else, then I'll do another follow-up video. But for now, those are the answers to the questions that I've received. And you guys go ahead and let me know in the comments section if you have any further questions. But I'm going to go ahead and do my best to get some numbers to you guys in that. I have a large OEM custom bicycle project in my shop right now that I have to finish up, so that takes priority over this. But once that's done, which should be this week, then probably by next week, and next week I'm going to be out of town for a bit. Anyway, I'm going to work on this as much as I can, and I'll keep you guys posted. So, thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.